Hey everyone, how's everyone doing today? It is Wednesday here. I hope everybody's week is going well. I'm having just slight technical difficulties getting started here, but I think we are on track now. So last couple days, I talked about a couple of really amazing D&D books, two that I think were among the best in the official books for fifth edition. But not all of the books are home runs. There are some that are not so great. And today I want to take a look at one that might be the worst fifth edition adventure module out there, and that is Princes of the Apocalypse. So I'm going to run through some of the specifics of the book and some of the good parts, some of the bad parts, and then I'd really love to hear your thoughts down in the comments. I mentioned yesterday oops, sorry, this side. I am on Mastodon now, so if you want to follow me over there, please feel free. I will post assorted things and love to hear what you have to say about stuff, and give me some ideas for other videos you'd like to see. So feel free to follow me over there. But let's take a look at Princes of the Apocalypse and see what's up with it. So I've got a few notes that I'm going to work with over here, and because I was going through it to refresh myself yesterday on this book, and so I wanted to make sure I didn't really overlook anything. So this book came out in 2015, and so those that know, fifth edition was released in the middle of 2014 with the basic rules, and then the player's handbook, the monster manual, and the dungeon master's guide followed. They also released a two-part adventure, Horde of the Dragon Queen and Rise of Tiamat, as like the first published module with it. But really, Princes of the Apocalypse really feels like the first true Wizards module that was out there. The other two were done by Wizards, but they were also by Kobold Press. This one had another publisher, and I can't remember exactly who it was that partnered with Wizards on it. But this one felt like it was supposed to be the real, this is what we were going to have going forward. This is what we were going to see as adventure modules. So there was a lot of anticipation for it. And it didn't come out until early 2015. And I was really excited about it myself because it had to do with elementals, and I always loved elementals as monsters to use in my adventures. Always thought they were really cool, and so having an adventure campaign built around them really sounded amazing. So I was really excited about it. When I got the book, I looked through it, and it seemed interesting, but it just kind of jumped all over the place, and I couldn't quite get my head around it, and I never really made a connection with it. So let's take a look at it and go through it in some detail and see what we've got here. So the first part is pretty much what you'd expect. The first chapter gives you kind of the background. If you read this background here, you can already kind of get a feel for some kind of cobbled together adventure, because there's a lot of different elements that are coming in with some dungeon basically that has changed hand and was built by dwarves, and it just even just reading that just seems like a little red flag that there's something that this is just going to be a lot of different things put together. The content itself is pretty straightforward and typical of what you get in adventures. You get a lot of background on these different cults that are out there in the world, and there's basically one for each of the different types of elementals, which is interesting. They give you a lot of adventure hooks. I wouldn't say that any of them are particularly great. They do try to tie back to a specific character, so you could even use a couple of them depending on what your characters are doing and what their backgrounds are. So that's not bad. Hooks in these adventures are generally pretty lame, so I don't really take too much away from it for that. You can definitely tell that they try to push the factions on you. Factions were new in 5th edition, and so they were definitely wanting to make that something that they called out. So here in your first adventure module, they have a whole section here talking about the factions and how it plays into this adventure and what they are. So you don't get that so much in the newer modules, and factions are still there, and it's a part of the game, but I don't generally use them in my campaigns. They're interesting and all, but I find them a little too limiting because it seems like the people that would want to be in a faction don't necessarily like the faction that they're supposed to be in based on the character they played. So, and it's difficult sometimes for people to cross those boundaries. So, so I like the idea of the factions, but they don't always work out so well. And here obviously being the first real adventure, they are definitely trying to push those. And then you get a little bit of more background of what's going on, and then we get into chapter 2. So this is definitely where things go off the rails. This chapter goes through the Desserin Valley, more specifically talks about first Red Larch, and it says that you can start this adventure at first level or at third level. And it gets really kind of confusing because I don't know why that they did that, because it's like it says on the book that it's supposed to be a 1st through 10th or 1st through 15th level, I think even, adventure, but then it gives you the option to start at 3rd level, and it's like, well, just start at 1st level. Don't give people the option. Just tell them we're going to start at 1st level and we're going to do these things, and then we're going to go here, and boom, you'll be at 3rd level. So I don't understand why you even get that option. And the problem with it is that you have to jump around in the book a lot. So as a DM, it gets really hard to keep track of things. And whether you start at 1st level or 3rd level, you still start in Red Larch. And it just is a difference of what happens in that town. So, and to make things even more confusing, if you decide to start at 1st level, well, then you have to go to chapter 6. So chapter 1 doesn't cover the 1st level stuff. You have to, if you're going to start at 1st level, you got to jump all the way to chapter 6 and do these adventures over here. And it even indicates that these quests are not really tied to the main adventure of the book. They're loosely based on it. So they're just designed to get you from 1st level to 3rd level. So you come in, you're at chapter 1, you say, oh, we're going to explore Red Larch. You explore Red Larch, and there's some quests that you get, which takes you over to chapter 6, and you got to run those there, but they don't really have anything to do with anything. And then you got to come back to chapter 2 and do more stuff in Red Larch, and you talk to the same people, but now they tell you different things. So it's a very confusing notion of why you would do this. And I don't know why you end up then having to explore Red Larch twice. So it's kind of, I don't know, it just is very, it makes no sense to me. And then you do get a section here where you're actually in the Desserin Valley, and you're looking at different places there with some different encounters that you can run. So it's got a bit of a sandbox feel to it. So it's not bad. I'm not saying that these quests are bad quests. It's just the structure of it is very convoluted and a little hard to follow of why you're doing certain things. So that's chapter 2. And I kind of touched on chapter 6 already, but I mentioned, it actually specifically says these quests are not part of the or they're only loosely based on the core storyline. So they come right out and admit that these quests are just not really part of the story, which just seems really lazy to me. Like they were running out of time and just said, we'll just put these quests in there. It wouldn't take very much to take pretty much any quest and tie it into some other storyline. So the fact that they even admit that they didn't do that is really weird for me. And keep in mind that this isn't a trivial section of the book. It's not like there's just a few pages. There's like 40 pages in this chapter. And so you've got 40 pages of this book that it comes out and says are only loosely related to the rest of the book, which is just absolutely crazy. so that's definitely an issue for me. And then we get into chapter 3 here, which is the secret of the Somber Hills. And this is actually where the adventure starts. So now we're into chapter 3, and everything else was really just kind of getting you started. If you were going to go from level 1, and then you had to jump to chapter 6, and then you come back here and you can go to chapter 3. And you get a little bit of an intro about Red Larch, even though it was just covered in depth in the prior chapter. So, we already went to Red Larch because that was already there. And the characters here are expected to now explore Red Larch and walk through and talk to people in the town and get some quests and listen to the rumors. But if you started at level 1, well, you already did Red Larch. You already walked around town and you already talked to the people. So you're basically doing this again after having already done it. So I don't understand why it seems like, again, you should have just had us start at level 1, explore Red Larch, get all the different things, or at least build on them and make some kind of logical connection, instead of us now, we're just going to start Red Larch again and talk to the same people, but now they're going to tell us different things. Because if I'll flip back here, and you can see I'm flipping around because this book flips around. There's 2 different types of things you can get. There's this trouble in Red Larch, which is what you would get if you were playing it from first level. But then there's this other one that is, and now I gotta find one, this Rumors of Evil. So there's this other one that's called Rumors of Evil, and that's what you get if you're on level 3 and you're coming back to Red Larch and you're talking to this person again. You get some other information. So just the whole back and forth between Red Larch and having to do it twice, and you're jumping around to chapter 6 and then back to chapter 3, just really just doesn't play very well. Just very hard to keep track of. So the and then we you kind of move forward, and we'll get into some of the specific quests. I mean, so the quests themselves, the encounters, they're perfectly fine. I actually don't have a problem with them. I've used them in other things. I haven't really used them in this module. I particularly like the Sacred Stone Monastery. I think it's a really great map. It's a great location. I've used it as because there's some cells down here in the corner, and I've actually started an adventure where the party wakes up and they're in these cells and they have to try to make their way out of this. So completely disconnected from this adventure, but it's a nice map and it's a good location to use for other things if you're so inclined to just kind of pilfer from this book. So that's really what chapter 3 is about. And then you get to chapter 4, and this one is essentially 4 different dungeon crawls. So this is where you really get into the elemental stuff, and as you go through, you're gonna basically crawl through these different dungeons, and they each relate to a different elemental. And you collect items and gather the weapons that you need for fighting the true enemy in this. So the Temple of the Crushing Wave is for the water elemental, and then you get a little further, and there's, I think, the Black Earth is for the earth elemental. So you get these dungeon crawls, which are fine. Nothing wrong with a good dungeon crawl. Then you get to chapter 5, and chapter 5 is where it all kind of comes together. Now you've gone to those dungeons and you've collected the things that you need, and now it's time to actually face the true enemy. So you start out in this dungeon that's called the Fane of the Eye, and from here you end up in the other dungeons that are more specific for the elemental prophets that you're ultimately supposed to deal with. So the Howling Caves then is going to be the air elemental, and then there's I don't know which one comes next. The Plunging Torrents is the water elemental. So you go through these, and again, it's more dungeon crawls that you go through to actually fight the elemental prophets and close these portals, which is what you need to do to finish the adventure. So I mean, they're decent dungeon crawls. They work pretty well. And again, I've actually used them for some other things. Now I've got into chapter 6 again here, so we'll skip over chapter 6 because that is only loosely part of this adventure. And then chapter 7 gets into the monsters and all the magic items for this module. So it's more the reference material that you have for everything. And then I believe there's some more appendices in the back that goes through. So I'm just kind of skipping through. You can see there's lots of creatures, lots of magic items, and these are the different 4 elemental weapons that you're seeking during the campaign. And you get the Genasi as a class, which has its merits. I'm not a huge fan of them putting classes and core type things like that in the adventure campaigns. I feel like these belong better in actual source books. They get buried in here, and especially if you're playing like Adventurers League, where you get a +1, you get to use the player's handbook plus one other book. If you wanted to play a Genasi, then this book has to be your +1, which means you miss out on all the other things that you might get from your +1 book, because there's not really much else in here for it. So, and your spells, so which is fine. There's quite a bit of real estate spent talking about how to adapt this for other campaign settings like Dark Sun and Eberron and stuff, which is interesting because at the time those were not 5th edition settings. So I mean, Dragonlance is just now coming out. Eberron came out a while ago. Greyhawk came out a while ago, but at the time it was just Forgotten Realms. So it's interesting that they even included something about that in here. And then there's some extra artwork that kind of shows the sketches and the evolution of some of the characters that you'll have in here. So, which is interesting, but there you go. So that's the book, Princes of the Apocalypse. So let's talk a little bit about what the conclusions of this here. Sorry, let me flip over to my other screen here. So what do I have to say about it? Is it the worst adventure? It may not be the worst. I'm going to look at a couple other ones that I've heard things about that I haven't actually read through myself. So I'll hold off on saying it's absolutely the worst, but it's definitely a disappointment. Being the first full module that was going to be released for 5th edition, it had a high bar to clear. It was something that people were really looking forward to, and it did not deliver on what people were expecting. Me personally, I was really looking forward to it because it had elementals, which was something that I really was looking forward to playing. And it just, it had some dungeon crawl stuff that was nice with the elementals, but it was just, the story was just all over the place. Had a lot of quests and a lot of pieces that were good, but they just didn't come together the way that you would want a nice campaign to come together. I don't like the fact that, I mentioned Red Larch. You got to go back and forth to Red Larch. You've already explored it. And it's one thing to have a sandbox, but Red Larch is a really small town. So to have Red Larch be your sandbox where you're going to spend a lot of time there, it gets old really fast because it's a very small town. You've already talked to these people. You already know what's going on. And then you got to go back, and then people are going to act like now here's some more information. It's like, well, why didn't you tell me that before? So it doesn't flow very well. Chapters 4 and 5 with these dungeon crawls are nice. I like them, but it's 4 dungeon crawls. And then you finish those 4 dungeon crawls, and as a reward, you get to go do 4 more dungeon crawls. And there's nothing wrong with dungeon crawls, but you think that you could mix it up a little bit. Make you for the same campaign to have you go through 4 different dungeons to track 4 different creatures, and then you have to go, and the next step of the adventure is to go to 4 different dungeons and track 4 different creatures. It's just redundant. It's almost like going back to Red Larch. We're just going to do the same thing again. So it's just the whole flow of the adventure is just not great. It doesn't seem to fit together very nicely. There's a lot of good pieces in it, but trying to run it as a DM is a challenge because you got to go from chapter 1 to chapter 2 to chapter 6 to chapter 3 to chapter 2 so keeping track of everything just gets very cumbersome. And so is it the worst? I don't know. You tell me. Anyone that's played it, let me know your thoughts down in the comments, and I'd like to see what you have to say about it. I definitely think it was a disappointment. And it needed some work, some more refinement for it to be very good. But yeah, let me know in the comments. If you like these videos, please do subscribe. I really appreciate it. If you do nothing else, please do like and subscribe the video if you enjoy it, and so I know which ones you want me to make more of. And don't forget to head out to Mastodon if you're going over there. You can follow me on there as well and engage with the community out there. So that's what I have to say for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and hope everybody has a great day today, and I will talk to you again tomorrow. So until then, take care.